Hi everybody, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about real crimes and real people. We have cases that will make you angry and also cases that will make you cry. Please do subscribe and do all those other things YouTube asks you to do to support content creators. I really do appreciate that. So for today I bring you the kidnapping and death of Cecilia Zhang. And what's interesting about this case is we don't know how she died, when she died, and where she died. The only thing we know is what her killer confessed, and we must assume his version of the events are really what happened. Some don't believe his story, but I want to know your take on this one. Do you believe him? If not, what's your theory? Let's find out what happened. Let's get started. Cecilia Zhang was born on March 30th, 1994. Her parents were Raymond Zhang and Cherry Zhu. Raymond was a computer programmer and Cherry taught English as a second language and computer courses to Chinese visa students. Cherry wanted to start an immigration consulting business, and this is important because the Zhus were very active with helping Chinese students settle in Canada, even providing them with board. Cecilia Zhang was in 4th grade in a public school near the family home. She was described as happy, intelligent, and well-adjusted. At that time, the Zhus rented rooms to Chinese visa students, which were located in the basement area. Unfortunately, when the Zhus opened their home to students, they also opened the door to the person who would kill their daughter. Even though students stayed in the basement, the Zhus also rented rooms to female Chinese students on the 2nd floor, where the family lived. So Cecilia didn't have a permanent room. At the time of Cecilia's disappearance, a close friend of the family lived at the house, Min Wu or Kitty Wu, and also Sherry's father was staying at their house because he was visiting from China. The students rarely used the main floor where the family lived, only by invitation. They had a separate entry. And this may seem like, why do we need to know this? Yes, we do, because the way they lived kinda is a factor for what happened. But remember, not the reason. It's not because of how they live Cecilia was killed. The Zhus had somewhat of a big house. They divided the floors. Basement went for Chinese students who were in Canada with student visas. It was divided in rooms, and they had a separate entry, so they wouldn't circulate inside the main floor. Zhus also let female students sometimes stay in the main floor rooms upstairs, like I said before. Cecilia sometimes slept in one room, then in another. It had been occupied by a relative or family friend or a female student who might have brought someone over. The bottom line is the Zhus wanted to help Chinese students in Canada. The last day Cecilia's parents saw her was on October 19, 2003. Cecilia's parents and grandfather went fishing. Cecilia stayed with Kitty Wu, family friend. The parents and grandfather returned, and Kitty left to spend some time with her friends. Cecilia went to bed at 10 p.m. and she slept with the night on. During the night, Cecilia's grandfather heard someone walking in the hallway, but he didn't check it out. It never crossed his mind something like his granddaughter being taken away was actually taking place. Kitty also heard noises, and because she had heard that same type of noise before, she thought it was just Cecilia tapping on the wall while she slept. In the early hours of the morning of October 20th, 2003, one of the students noticed the side entrance door was open. The night before, the door was closed, but not locked. So the question is, who left it open and why? Cecilia's mother received 2 different phone calls that morning. One, no one talked, and the other, she didn't get to pick it up on time. Then Sherry went to the kitchen and found the kitchen window open and the screen bent. There was a visible shoe print on the kitchen counter. The whole door which separated the students' renting rooms and the family's area was unlocked. Something odd was going on. It was about to become a nightmare. The family realized Cecilia wasn't in the room. They searched the house. Raymond and Cherry went to Cecilia's school because they thought thought she could have gone alone, which was very unusual. She wasn't allowed to be by herself. And when they returned home, Cecilia's parents called police. Cecilia Zhang was missing. Police started investigating Cecilia's disappearance. They processed the house for clues. Everyone was interviewed, including the students. They searched everywhere but couldn't find Cecilia, and then they issued an Amber Alert. The police noticed the kitchen window must have been where the person who took Cecilia entered, and the door, which was open, was where they left. The investigators found fingerprints and a palm print on the window. They found a kitchen knife at the fence line near the rear corner of the house. There was a fingerprint on the tip of the blade, and this fingerprint matched the one they found on the corner bedding on the stairway. Finding a fingerprint is good, really good, but it can belong to anyone. But the thing is, they couldn't match it to anyone. So, square one. Cecilia went missing for months. Then on March 27, 2004, a local found skeletal remains at the Credit River. The police was called. They took the remains. They didn't find any clothing near the body or on the body. They found a shovel. There were some marks which suggested someone had tried to dig to bury the body, but they weren't able because the floor was too firm. But the question is, who was those skeletal remains? Dental records and fingerprints helped identify the remains. It was Cecilia Zhang. Cecilia was dead. Because the body was decomposed, they couldn't determine the cause of death. Extensive examinations were conducted by expert forensic pathologists and a forensic anthropologist, but they couldn't determine how, when, where Cecilia died. It was determined Cecilia's body had been at the location for a few months. There was no evidence of assault or other trauma. Toxicology ruled out drugs or any other substances. There was a massive investigation before and after Cecilia's body was found. To identify who left the fingerprints on the window, the police tested fingerprints, DNA, they checked phone records, interviewed everyone who stayed at the house. Other law enforcement groups joined, which included the FBI and Chinese authorities. While interviewing who stayed at the house, the police interviewed a female student who had stayed in the room where Cecilia was staying at the time. She told the police she had actually received a visit from someone there. She gave the police that person's cell phone number. Then, on April 27, 2004, the police visited this individual at his apartment, where he gave a statement. His fingerprints, DNA sample, and also consented the police to check his phone records. While investigators were trying to eliminate potential suspects, on June 18, 2004, the fingerprints and partial palm print taken from the scene matched to a man named Chen. Also, the fingerprint from the tip of the blade of the knife found belonged to Chen too. Chen was born on January 30, 1983 in Shanghai, China. Chen went to Canada with a student visa since 2001. His parents worked hard to provide him with a good education. His father was an airline executive and his mother a police officer in Shanghai. He attended Seneca College. This is where he met the female student who had stayed at Cecilia's room. They were just friends. He went to the Zhang's house several times and knew the Zhang family. When his friend moved out, he never returned to the house. Chen had no family in Canada. While investigating Chen, police found Chen was failing his studies. He was worried he was going to lose his immigration status and he would be deported to China. He was financially in trouble and he was desperate to stay in Canada, to the point where he was considering an arranged marriage. But this would cost him $25,000. And he was desperate to get those. The police investigated Chen's friends to see if any one of them were involved in this possible crime. They recorded conversations of Chen and his friends. Chen seemed to be worried about the tests and the investigation. The police told him he was a prime suspect and they wanted to examine his car. They wanted to see how he would react to this information. And they also followed Chen. They saw Chen trying to to replace the trunk liner of his car several times, and he also cleaned his trunk. The police seized the liner, they tested, but there was no evidence that could link the liner to Cecilia. It had been cleaned with a solvent. Min Chen's actions were suspicious, and then on July 21st, 2004, Min Chen was arrested and he confessed to what had happened. He kidnapped Cecilia because he needed money, so he was going to ask for a ransom. According to him, it was never about killing Cecilia. It was just a kidnapping. Keep Cecilia for a few hours, ask for a ransom, and let go. Min Chen allegedly didn't prepare for the occasion. He arrived at the house, didn't wear gloves, weapons, or a disguise. He entered the house through the unlocked side entrance. He tried to enter the family part of the house through the side hallway door, but it was locked. He went to the student kitchen in the basement. He got a knife. He used it to try to open the door, but it didn't work, and evidence supported this. He then went to the patio door. It was locked, and finally he got in through the kitchen window. He went upstairs to the second floor. He saw a nightlight. He went to check if it was Cecilia. Cecilia awoke. She got out of the bedroom. She was wrapped in a purple towel because she slept naked. To prevent Cecilia from screaming, he grabbed Cecilia around her head and neck with his hands. She struggled. He held her tight around her neck and over her mouth and face, which he covered with the purple towel. He took Cecilia out of the house, carried her to the car. Cecilia was still struggling, and she was putting up a fight, but she lost that fight. She was unconscious by the time they reached Min Chen's car. Min Chen opened the trunk. He put Cecilia in it, and he drove away. He stopped to check Cecilia, but she wasn't moving, she wasn't breathing. He realized Cecilia was dead, and he hid her body. He tried to bury it, but the ground was too firm. Min Chen pled guilty to second-degree murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 15 years. After parole, he may be deported to China, where he can be arrested and face trial for the crime according to the Chinese law. Do you believe Min Chen's version of what happened?